and I have nothing but respect for how he plays the game of golf, because to be honest, when he was climbing up the leaderboard and he was 2 ahead, I was...
I do not know about you, but this feels like one of those moments where something shifts, and you sense it before anyone says it out loud. On the surface, this is just another Masters storyline. Big names, pressure, a few post-round comments, then one line changes everything. Classless player. That was aimed at Rory McIlroy. Coming from Bryson DeChambeau, that is not something you hear every day in professional golf. So the question is, what actually happened here? Players do not just say things like that for no reason. There is always something underneath. Once you see the full picture, this hits very differently. Before we get into it, quick question. Where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. I always like seeing where real golf fans are coming from. Let us slow this down because none of this came out of nowhere. Everything started during the Masters. If you were watching closely, you probably felt something off even before anything was said. On paper, it looked completely normal. Top players in contention, big names on the leaderboard, the usual pressure that comes with a major. Zoom in though, and the dynamic between Bryson DeChambeau and Rory McIlroy was slightly off. Not loud, not obvious, just off. Small moments, subtle reactions, the kind of things you only catch if you are really paying attention to how players carry themselves on the course. Here's the thing about tension at this level. It does not always show up as arguments or confrontation. Sometimes it shows up in body language, in decision-making, in the way players respond to each other without actually saying a word. During this round, that tension started to build in layers. Shots where one player looked locked in and the other looked slightly irritated. Moments where the energy between them just stopped feeling neutral. Nothing you could point to directly. Enough to feel like something was brewing underneath. As the round progressed, that pressure only got heavier, because now it was not just about playing the course. Both players were playing each other. Every rivalry has a moment where it stops being subtle. For this one, it came late in the round. Not a blow-up, not something obvious to everyone watching live. One of those moments where, if you understand the game, you immediately know something is off. It came down to pace, reactions, and how both players were handling the situation under pressure. At one point, Bryson DeChambeau was clearly locked into his routine, taking his time, reading the line, working through his process the way he always does. Behind him, Rory McIlroy was moving differently. Quicker, slightly impatient, nothing blatant, nothing that breaks rules. Enough to feel like the rhythm between them was no longer aligned. In golf, that matters more than people think. Timing is part of focus. Routine is part of control. When that rhythm gets disrupted, even slightly, players feel it. There were a couple of instances where Bryson stepped away, reset, almost like he was not comfortable with how things were flowing. Not angry, not confrontational, just aware. That awareness builds. From Bryson's side, this was no longer purely about playing his own game. It started to feel like he was being pulled out of it. Put yourself in Rory's position, though, and you get a completely different picture. He was staying in his zone, playing at his natural pace, not trying to interfere at all. This is exactly how tension starts in professional golf. Not with clear conflict, with interpretation. One player feels disrupted, the other feels normal. Neither says anything in the moment. Both carry it forward. So by the time the round ended, that energy did not just disappear, it turned into something else. After the round, when Bryson DeChambeau was asked about how things played out, his initial response was exactly what you would expect. Calm, measured, respectful. He gave credit, talked about the round, kept it professional. Then the tone changed, not dramatically, not loudly, just enough that if you were paying attention, you could feel it shift. He said it. Classless player. Directed at Rory McIlroy. Pause there for a second, because in golf, that is not a normal comment. This is a sport where even disagreements are usually softened. Players choose words carefully, especially in public. When someone uses a word like that, it is not accidental, it is deliberate. It usually means something has been building for a while. What makes this even more significant is what Bryson did not do. No long explanation followed. No specific incidents were listed. The comment stood on its own. When a player keeps it that short, it usually means they expect people inside the game to understand exactly what they are referring to. Almost like a signal, not to fans, but to other players. Connect that back to what happened during the round. The pace, the rhythm, the subtle tension. It starts to make sense, not necessarily justified, but understandable from his perspective. The next question was obvious. How does Rory McIlroy respond? If you were expecting a strong reaction, you did not get one. At least not on the surface. Rory's tone was completely different. Calm, composed. He showed no interest in making this bigger than it needed to be. No escalation, barely even an acknowledgement. That restraint in itself is a response. In moments like this, players usually go one of two ways. They match the energy or they step away from it. Rory clearly chose the second. Stepping back, though, does not mean it meant nothing. At this level, players hear everything and remember everything. Even without a public reply, this shapes how they approach the next moment. Rory's argument is actually quite clean. Go back to what happened during the round. Nothing was clearly outside the rules. Nothing you can point to and say, that was wrong. From that angle, he was simply doing what he always does, staying locked in, moving at his natural speed, trusting his read. If that is the case, being labeled classless can feel completely unwarranted. From Bryson's side, it was never about rules. It was about feel, about whether the flow of the game felt fair in that particular moment. That is where these situations get complicated. Both players can genuinely believe they are right. One is reacting to how it felt, the other is standing on what actually happened. Those two things can exist at the same time, and that is exactly what creates real tension. Not when one side is clearly wrong, when both sides have a version of the truth that holds up. Most people look at this and see one comment. The real story runs deeper than that. For a long time, the structure at the top of professional golf was clear. A few dominant names, a certain level of respect, an unspoken understanding of how things are handled between players. Moments like this start to change that. Not overnight, but slowly. When a player publicly uses a word like classless, it does two things. First, it lowers the barrier. Other players start to feel like they can say what they actually think. Second, it shifts how fans see the sport. Less respectful competition, more real rivalry. Every future interaction gets interpreted differently after that. At the top level, golf is not just about skill, it is about belief. When players believe someone is untouchable, they play more cautiously, more reactively. The moment that belief starts to crack, everything opens up. Situations like this contribute to that shift, not because of the words alone, but because of what those words suggest underneath. Players are watching each other closely, judging each other, no longer holding everything back. So the next time these two are in contention, it is not just another round. There is context now. There is memory. There is something to prove. Every shot feels heavier. Every interaction carries more weight. Every result tells a story beyond the scorecard. Here is where I actually land on this. Both sides make sense to me, and both are slightly off at the same time. From Bryson's side, I get it. When you are inside the moment, rhythm matters more than almost anything. If something feels off, even slightly, it can pull you out of your process. At that level, that is enough to cost you. At the same time, calling someone classless is a strong line. In a sport built around respect, that word carries weight, probably more than the moment required. Rory's case is equally clean. No rule was broken. He was playing his game, his natural pace, his way of handling pressure. Being labeled for that can feel completely unfair. The real truth sits somewhere in the middle. Bryson was reacting to how things felt. Rory was standing on what actually happened. Both positions are defensible. That is what makes this genuinely interesting. It is not a clear right or wrong situation. It is one of those cases where small differences in interpretation snowball into something much bigger. Going forward, that is the part that matters most. If these two end up in contention again, this does not reset. It carries into decisions, reactions, and how they read each other under pressure. On the surface, this looks like one comment, but that is not really what this is. Moments like this usually turn into something much bigger. So here is what I want to know. Do you think Bryson had a right to say it, or did he cross a line that players in this sport just do not cross? Drop your take in the comments. If you enjoy breakdowns like this, hit subscribe, because the next time these two are on the same leaderboard, this story is not over.